fraud, mental manipulation, sexual abuse, and exploitation. These are just a few of the things Robert Shin has been accused of today. Robert has been running the Shikina church for 30 years alongside a talent agency called 7M for TikTok stars, and the two things are more connected than you would expect. Following the release of the Netflix docu-series on the 7M TikTok cult, we'll be looking at Robert Shin's uncomfortable history and his cult of talent. Robert Shin founded the Shikina church all the way back in 1984 in Los Angeles. But this story really started in February of 2022 when Melanie Wilking went live with her mother and father, Kelly and Dean, to talk about the continued absence of their sister from their lives.
Miranda is a part of a religious group and she's not allowed to speak to us. And
that's the thing.
That's the thing that we've realized is Miranda, James, all these people that they're with, they're not in control of their lives. Someone else is controlling their lives and they're all victims of this.
Miranda and Melanie grew up in Michigan, and the sisters always shared a love for dance. From the documentary and the little pieces of history they shared, it was a pretty harmonious childhood for both of them, with parents who actually supported their dream of dancing.
Hey Wilkings and Queens, we're the Wilking sisters, and welcome back to another episode of What's Next?
As they got older, their ambitions grew, and Miranda was the first to venture out of home to the big leagues in LA. Melanie obviously had the same dream, but wasn't far behind. So together, they started sharing their dance videos on social media under the name the Wilking Sisters.
A year later, I was like, I want to do the same thing. I moved out to California to be with Miranda, but we would have people telling us, you can't be next to each other, you can't audition for this together. So then the dream kind of shifted. We still loved dance, we loved that, but then we realized that, okay, we could be doing really the same thing on social media and be ourselves.
As they grew in popularity, they naturally started to network with other talents in the business, and one of the first names was James B-Derek. B-Dash was relatively popular on social media and did a couple of videos with the sisters before really hitting it off with Miranda specifically. They started dating and doing dances together until they met a certain videographer, Isaiah Shin, son of Shikina church pastor Robert Shin.
Kevin got a call from B-Dash and B-Dash was like, oh, come, like, we got some really great stuff going on. Like, I'm with some really dope people that you've filmed with before. You know, Isaiah, you filmed with him before. He, like, shot a music video for Kevin. They're helping us a lot.
Isaiah was James's videographer. They had been working together for close to a year.
Their videos were really dope.
Kevin started doing videos with them and, like, you know, start meeting everybody.
So there's some names to take note of here. Alongside B-Dash and Miranda, you also had Kevin Davis, Kayla Gray, Aubrey Fisher, Kylie Douglas, and Nick Reno. Just the most popular of the names that were working together and being introduced to Robert through his son Isaiah. Robert was preaching the Bible to these TikTok influencers and taking an interest in their careers, which led to the formation of 7M Films, an agency that pretty much handled all the business aspects of the influencer game and just allowed the dancers to do the one thing they wanted to do, dance.
Robert was just like looking around and then he's asking me like, how many followers you have, how long you been dancing for? And I was like, yeah, I have this much followers. He's like, you have like around the same amount of followers as B-Dash. He was like, you know what? I'm gonna start a management company. I'm gonna call it 7M. Add B-Dash, add Reno. And he was like, okay, let's add Vic too as well. Oh, my boys are okay. I was like, I don't mean it.
So to be clear, Robert Shin was running the Shikina church and conducting services with these TikTok dancers as church members while also running 7M Films and managing their careers. So Miranda, Kylie, B-Dash, Aubrey, and all these dancers were all collaborating with each other, living out of the same house, paying rent and agency fees to the same pastor who would preach to them on Sunday. That may be weird, but what's far more weirder is exactly how much of their own income was going into the church.
If they're saying they paid you $102,000, my goal is to figure out how much of this you gave to Shikina, Hannah, Isaiah, all that.
Man, that's like all the money basically.
Okay, so
because I had to pay videography fee for either Randall or Isaiah. Then I also had to pay rent, 20% management fee, which you have to give to 7 of them. Then you have 10, 10, 10, which is tithes, offering, and then God.
30% to the church.
More than that sometimes. Sometimes I'll get like 50% of my income. But everything combined together, we run it up. Give me like 60 or 70%. And that's before taxes.
An aspect about all this that's not getting enough attention is just how Robert Shin was able to convince all these young stars who were lukewarm Christians at best to become dedicated members of his church. Miranda was reading the Bible regularly at this time, even though her sister Melanie revealed that growing up, they weren't in an overly religious household.
He said, oh, I've been at Isaiah's house with James, having dinners and reading the Bible. We didn't grow up very religious. We grew up Catholic, but it wasn't on a regular basis.
The thing about Robert Shin and the church that really convinced Melanie that her sister was part of a cult, though, was when she was weirdly invited to a service on short notice.
So you have to be invited to services. You can't just go. Even though you know they're Wednesdays and Sundays, you can't just show up. Then I get a phone call from Chloe. I picked up and she's like, hey, I just talked to the pastor and he really needs you to hear his word today. And what are the chances you can have your friend just Uber to the airport? You come here right now.
After Miranda and Melanie separated, Miranda went deeper into isolation and cut off her family almost entirely. She refused to go to her own grandfather's funeral, saying she needed the permission of a man of God to go. And she even stopped texting her parents back. Then, in 2021, Miranda gets married to James Derrick. And not only does she not invite any of her family members, but she doesn't even tell them about it at all.
We just find out through social media they're getting married.
She got married. That's something that I wish I was there for. We've been those girls that dreamed about our weddings since the time we were little.
If the message from Miranda wasn't already clear, Melanie tried to wish her a happy birthday in a post her husband James made on Instagram. Within minutes, Melanie's comment on the post was deleted, she was blocked, and the rest of the Wilking family was also blocked. These dancers were apparently taught by Robert Shin to completely cut off their families in the process he called dying to yourself.
Bury yourself. Get rid of yourself. And anybody and anything that reminds you of yourself, you gotta die to it. So when you die to something, a new nature is born.
Die to yourself. Dying to yourself means that whatever you want or whatever you need, die to it. Because whenever you die to something, it'll come back to life and resurrect.
You're not Jesus' disciple until you die to your loved ones.
One of the main things we were learning is that you have to die to your family in order to save them.
Now, it's at this point in the timeline that the Wilkin family do the now infamous live stream, taking the story to the public. It was a move that yielded positive results. They linked up with Nick Reino's parents after this and have been collaborating since to take down Robert Shin. The Wilking family has been at the forefront of this entire story. In fact, it was that same live stream video that would sow doubt in the minds of some of the dancers leading to their exit. In particular, Aubrey Fisher, Kylie Douglas, Kevin Davis, and Kayla Gray all left after this point and have all been key figures in the attempt to take 7M down.
Wilkings went live. We obviously were all aware because we saw it on social media.
Miranda wouldn't tell us anything, but people have thoughts about this, but do not say anything.
How it was brought up was like, oh, Miranda's family is making a fuss because they still want to control her.
I know from being here with her, she'll cry sometimes because of how much she misses her family. And she would even say to me sometimes, I do want to see them, but Robert was not saying it's a good idea.
It would seem the Wilking family post achieved more than they ever expected it to, including putting Robert Shin himself in panic mode. After the video came out and went viral, Robert became more strict with church rules, allegedly making members sign NDAs at his service.
Not scared. We're gonna clear our name, we're gonna silence every voice, and then we're gonna be famous too. Everybody's gonna know about 7M. And they're all gonna know how we overcame all that attack. God never lost a fight.
Highlighting for a 4-hour service.
So he started panicking in services,
everything gets more strict.
That's why I had you sign NDA so that you won't share this. Praise the Lord. Amen.
NDAs in service? Why am I signing an NDA?
Robert unfortunately came up with one idea that worked. He instructed his members to cut off their families more subtly in order for them to remain in control of the narrative, proving once again how masterful he is with his manipulations.
This problem, we handle it all wrong. Instead of cutting families, it's exactly the opposite. You got to meet with them. You got to talk to them. It takes diligence to be able to cut your friends and family out in a way that they don't even know that they've been cut out. You got to be undercover.
This strategy worked for a while as Miranda basically reconnected with her family on the condition that they never bring up 7M, the church, or Robert Shin during their meeting.
We would try to say things to her about the pastor, about things that we were hearing. And that's when she said, you know, if this is how these meetings are going to go, like every time I see you, if we're going to be talking about this, then I'm not going to want to meet with you guys anymore. So we made the promise not to talk about it, and we haven't talked about it with her since.
As details were rapidly coming out about the Shikina church and all its TikTok dancers who were victims, we quickly find out that this was going on for decades. Another pair of sisters, Melanie Lee and Priscilla, who also feature in the Netflix documentary, came out to cast more light on Shikina. Priscilla and Mel were both members of the church around the early 2000s and spent many years living and working for Robert. Mel even says she worked at a coffee shop owned by Robert under insane conditions.
Robert had opened several businesses, a cafe, 2 mortgage companies, 2 real estate companies, 2 flower shops, and all the church people were working these companies. They had me work Monday to Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and I got paid $100 a week.
Priscilla, on the other hand, worked closer to Robert as she ran both the mortgage and the real estate business tied to Shikina. Money would come in and out of her account, with her only role being to write the checks and keep everything flowing. She earned only about $80 every 2 weeks, even though the businesses were generating revenue well into the millions.
I ran the mortgage company. I did a lot of the work on the real estate company as well. We were starting to make more money. The mortgage and the real estate company combined brought in over $1 million in commission in 2021. I just saw deposits to my bank account, which I wasn't supposed to touch. She goes, I ordered checks for you, sign all of them. Hannah would write the check, she would deposit into my bank account, and then she will withdraw it by writing more checks out of my bank account. It would be a check to either the church, check to Robert, check to pay other people's expenses. I only had $80 every 2 weeks.
As if that wasn't bad enough, the more serious allegations levied against Robert by the sisters would be that of sexual and physical abuse. Melanie claims at this point that half of the church's female members left the church after he was exposed by a few members. Mel, who decided to stay after this, was then seemingly taken advantage of via a massage incident.
Shortly after that, Robert says, I want you to come to my house. He started making advances towards me. He says, he's done so much for me. I need to pay my price. It started out with the massages. He tells me he's a man of God, and just like King David in the Bible, he's allowed to have mistresses. I want you to be my mistress.
Priscilla, who stayed in the church long after her sister Melanie left, suffered familiar abuse.
It started with just massages. And then he goes, go closer to my thigh. Closer. Closer. He was desensitizing me that it's okay for women to have sex with him.
Because of all the rumors and allegations coming out from the sisters, Robert was the first to take legal action. He sued both Melanie and Priscilla for defamation. The sisters then retaliated with counter charges, including but not limited to forced labor, financial misconduct, mental manipulation, and sexual abuse. In an intense scene from the documentary, Melanie and a group of her friends can be seen tracking down Robert Shin and a few key church members to a nearby restaurant to serve them legal documents.
Robert Shin, you've been served.
Matthew Shin, you've been served.
Are you Isaiah?
And your Alpha Plus routine.
You'll be served too.
Court proceedings for the case are set to start properly in 2025. For what it's worth, Robert Shin's wife publicly distanced themselves from the allegations, slamming Netflix in the process. She says, 2 years ago, Melanie Lee Goldman, Priscilla Lay, aka Eliza Priscilla Lay, and their co-conspirators launched a concerted smear campaign to defame Robert Shin, his family, and his business associates after Mr. Shin did not capitulate to Miss Lee's extortion demands. Despite sworn statements from co-conspirators that confirmed the scheme by Miss Goldman and Miss Lay to disseminate widespread lies, Netflix recklessly provided a global platform to peddle a false narrative that is at the center of ongoing litigation. She's not the only one making denials either. Nick Reno, Miranda Derrick, and B-Dash have all denied the allegations and also refused to comment on the Netflix documentary. Miranda in particular has claimed that following the release of the documentary, she's received death threats from strangers.
Hey guys, I know I don't normally make this kind of content, but I just wanted to be transparent and a little vulnerable with you. But before this documentary, my husband and I, we felt safe. Now that this documentary is out, we feel like our lives have been put in danger. We have both been followed in our cars. We have received hate mail, death threats.
There's clearly a lot more information that's yet to be revealed about this whole saga, but there can be no denial that many families have been broken and left in despair by Robert Shin and Shikina. The dancers who wanted to do the thing they love were roped into a commitment where they had no idea how deep it was going to go. While some of them might have escaped, the situation remains red hot until Robert Shin is finally taken down.
So when this time of trial and troubles, I had to write out my warfare prayer. Anyone that touches the anointed will suffer harm.